Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving straight into a wildly fascinating, grim-dark, gothic fable of self-discovery. We're going to unpack a profound journey of psychological alchemy, and we'll be looking at it all through the intense, highly clarifying lens of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy. If you've ever felt like modern life essentially forces us to suppress our rawest, most chaotic instincts in favor of this kind of sterile hyperlogic, you're going to find this incredibly relevant.
There are no facts, only interpretations. Nietzsche hit the nail on the head with this one, and it perfectly sets the philosophical stakes for us right out of the gate. You see, the journey of our main character, who we'll call the sage, is ultimately a high-stakes, life-or-death debate over exactly how to interpret the void inside of him. But before we plunge headfirst into his psychological abyss, we have to grasp a crucial concept. Merely giving a philological name to our deepest fears, or our shadow selves, doesn't actually solve them. Naming is not completing. So with that foundation firmly in place, let's explore the very first stage of the sage's journey.
Okay, Part 1, The Hollow Tower, Rationalist Supremacy. Let's see exactly where our protagonist is starting from. Our sage sits enthroned in a structure built entirely on sterile logic. But there's a dark residue from his past trials staring right back at him. The text calls this entity the Faustbuch Übermensch. Now, this isn't just your standard everyday shadow that you can easily integrate with some healthy therapy. No, this is something much harder. It's a relentless force, an ataphistic sediment. It literally carries the primal fury of a stolen dragon's fire, mixed with the cold malice of Nidhogg. And if you know your mythology, Nidhogg is the creature that patiently gnaws away at the roots of the world tree. Its entire business is destroying the very foundations upon which everything grows. And it has taken up its post.
This brings us to the central cosmic conflict of our fable. On one side, we have the sage's sterile rationalism. He's out here trying to manage a psychic vacuum with administered zeros, desperately clinging to static control over his life. On the exact opposite side is the terrifying, pulsing reality of biological chaos, the primal fury and Dionysian rupture of the blood that he is trying so hard to ignore. His hyper-rationalism has completely severed his connection to ancestral myth, leaving him with nothing but a sophisticated management system for an unnamed vacancy.
So, to achieve true internal sovereignty, the sage has to undergo a violently disruptive alchemical transmutation mapped across these four distinct parables: the Sentinel of Stasis, the Redeemer's Deception, the Crushing of the Will, and finally, the Tainted Triumph. Let's trace his evolution from a hollow shell to something entirely new.
Moving into our next phase, the Sentinel's Dark Debate. This is the mirror leap.
This is where the shadow completely shatters the boundary between what the sage actually became and what he actively refused to become. The Crimson Accuser launches into this absolutely brutal, undeniable critique. It completely tears through the sage's interpretation of his own mind, arguing that his so-called civilized reason isn't order at all. It's just a management system for a vacuum. The accuser is basically saying, you didn't conquer your demons, you just built a sterile spreadsheet to cover up an empty void.
And this is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Giving a fear its formal name doesn't exhaust its power over you. All of the sage's administered zeros, his carefully tracked efficiency indicators, his little proxies for contentment, they are literally just dry parchment against a ravenous void with teeth. The biological chaos of the blood doesn't care about your ledgers. It feeds on all that dry parchment, regardless of how neatly it's organized.
Speaking directly through the sage's own golden mask, the Sentinel of Resentment tries to weaponize what Nietzsche called the spirit of gravity. It tries to force this suffocating static control over the sage, framing any kind of fluid movement or organic growth as a dangerous fever. It desperately wants to extinguish the fire of becoming, just to keep the sage frozen in his structure of identical vacancy.
Let's look at Part 3, Crushing the Internal Gods. The impact of reality hits hard.
As the Anstoss, the irresistible, crushing impact of reality begins to fracture his hollow tower, the shadow morphs. It becomes a pale redeemer, draped in obsidian robes, preaching from a gilded cage. And this redeemer offers a truly terrifying kind of salvation called intellectual salvage. Basically, it hoards dead things. It takes every hard-won, vibrant victory, smelting the living gold of stories into the heavy, dull lead of mortality, just to entomb them in leaden boxes. Desperately afraid of the unknown abyss, it uses a winter's bite to siphon away all the warmth of the sage's ambition.
This forces the sage right up to the iron threshold of his own unconscious mind. He has to confront the terminal weight of the shadow he rejected. And here, a violet gavel comes crashing down, forcing a wildly agonizing evolution. It violently crushes his three internal gods together. Memory, reason, and will are just smashed into a single point.
The spirit of gravity roars this revelation at him. The sage suddenly realizes that his former so-called virtue was nothing more than a masquerade. It was just a shroud covering the monster lurking inside his psychic vacuum. This realization leads to a terminal synthesis with The Ugliest Man, a reflection of a will that seeks legal revenge against a chaotic world that simply refuses to be boxed in by poor, sterile reason.
Which brings us to the climax in Part 4, a Dionysian rupture.
This is where the sage finally breaks free from static logic through a violent, chaotic transformation. He embraces the Dionysian rupture. Think of it as a grave dance upon the wreckage of his past. By employing terminal honesty with himself, he completely shatters the shadow's static throne. Instead of denying his internal darkness, he converts the poison of his repressed chaos into raw, unfiltered fuel.
And behold the dark alchemy at play here. This is such a fascinating twist. He doesn't defeat the darkness in the traditional fairy tale sense. No, he integrates the atavistic spirit. He literally steals the dragon's fire right back from the Sentinel of Resentment and weaponizes it to power his own ascent. He fully embraces the chaos of the blood.
Finally, we reach our resolution. Architect of the Void. Unyielding sovereignty. The once hollow shell of a man achieves absolute internal sovereignty, but the result is, well, it's chilling. Declaring mastery, the sage emerges completely transformed. He doesn't fill the void with happy thoughts or better spreadsheets. He masters the void by actually becoming it. He is now the architect of the void, reigning over his own spiritual wasteland through a cold, unyielding sovereignty. He returns to the spiritually famished city not as a broken man, but as a fully unified subject. He has successfully synthesized his primal chaos with his intellect. But make no mistake, he wears a new, far more terrifying mask, armed with an inner certainty that is as cold as steel. The psychological evolution is complete. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to bring this dark alchemical journey right back to your own doorstep. I'll leave you with this provocative thought. Are your own hyper-rational daily routines, your color-coded calendars, your meticulously managed life, are they just a management system shielding you from the void? If you strip all of that away, what really lies beneath your own scaffolding of reason? Something to think about. Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating fable with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.